All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of world history, it's time to get serious. It's the fall final review. I'm really terrible at hearing my own voice on record, so bear with me. Imagine the Rocky soundtrack playing in the background as you gear up for the effects of the Black Death. You're welcome. Guys, a few major things that you need to remember. Population is going to be wiped out. Almost 50% of Europe dies. Look at all those gross bubbles and pussy gross boils happening in this picture here. This is happening to a lot of people. The Black Death is not an elitist. It hits everyone from the poor to the wealthy, as you can see in this picture where we have two very wealthy nobles being struck by the plague. This is really kind of going to affect the Middle Ages because industry and trade are basically going to halt. It causes a depression of sorts. Trade that was once flourishing is going to stop because people don't want to touch each other. The spread of culture is going to be diminished. We're also going to see, just the characterization of the feudal system and the class system still happening here during the Middle Ages. So the biggest effect is going to be just the end of trade, the end of culture, and wiping out a population. This is going to lead to some good news, though. We're going to be so tired of all of this death and destruction that people are going to start thinking outside the box, especially the artists and the major thinkers of the Renaissance period. We're going to see a lot of artistic themes during this time, a time of rebirth after all of the death and dying. A couple of big things to note, the artistic themes at this time. There's a focus on secular, which means non-religious aspects of art. That's not to say that religious aspects go out the door completely. The David, the La Pieta of Michelangelo, for example, are still going to be major religious works. However, you're going to see a different perspective in art. If you note in this picture, the School of Athens by Raphael, I could basically walk down this hallway. That's called perspective. It gives art a two-dimensional look, giving depth and realism. Before we saw very flat, cartoonish figures in the Middle Ages, okay? Other things that we're going to see, things like chiaroscuro, which I'm probably mispronouncing because I always do, but note the shadows, especially on the stairs as Da Vinci and Michelangelo and Raphael are all painted walking together with great thinkers like Socrates. Famous artists and works of the time you'll have to know, including the Mona Lisa, the School of Athens, the David by Da Vinci, Raphael, and Michelangelo's works as well. So brush up on your art history, folks. Ooh, the Protestant Reformation. There's that handsome Martin Luther. He's going to change the world, you guys. He and Johannes Gutenberg, who will invent the printing press at the same time. They're going to start spreading ideas about the Catholic Church. Number one, we don't really like the sale of indulgences, having to pay for your sins to be forgiven by a religious figure that is not God. Martin Luther believed that Christians should be able to communicate directly with God. They didn't need a liaison through the Catholic Church, and his ideas are going to spread. You might want to take a look at that 95 Thesis and pick a few points in some of his beefs against the Catholic Church. Martin Luther's ideas are going to spread from what is now modern-day Germany, which you might want to know because that's going to be on a map. They're going to spread through the Gutenberg printing press throughout all of Europe. One guy who likes his idea is King Henry VIII, that guy. Oh, that lovely rotund face. He's not going to like the Catholic Church because they're not going to let him have a divorce from his first wife of many, Catherine of Aragon. Okay, you might want to look into the beginning of the Anglican Church and how he responded to the Protestant Reformation. Again, the concerns about the Catholic Church that Martin Luther had were things like confession, the sale of indulgences, nepotism, which is basically giving out high positions to all of your relatives. John Calvin is also going to pick up on this idea, and he will begin the practice of predestination. There are people who are predestined to get into heaven, and that the church has nothing to do with that. Again, Henry VIII is going to be a very important absolutism figure who's going to use this Reformation to his advantage. The scientific revolution and the Enlightenment. we're going to see, speaking of the church, a lot of conflict between the church and new scientific thinkers. Remember, the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment are all happening at the same time as the Renaissance. It's really hard to imagine, but we spent about 4 months talking about things that were all going on at the same time after the Middle Ages. So you want to know Francis Bacon and his scientific theory, Galileo, Isaac Newton, remember gravity and using mathematics and calculus to solve problems. One major person that's going to come up on this exam for some of you is Copernicus and his heliocentric theory, which is that the sun is the center of the universe. Copernicus was criticized by the church for being a heretic because they believed that the earth was the center of the universe, that people were the center of the universe. So to start to explore beyond the earth was a very dangerous thing. A lot of these guys were going to be arrested and jailed for their beliefs. And of course, now we celebrate their theories. Scientists are going to sort of influence Enlightenment thinkers who are going to encourage people to experiment, to observe, and to use their brains, use reason, instead of turning to religious figures for their education. And Gutenberg's printing press, again, ooh, that guy's coming up twice. He must be important. It's going to lead to the spread of ideas all around the world. In fact, that's probably one of the most important inventions of all time. Another thing happening at the same time as all this other stuff is the age of exploration. People are getting very bold with their ships, especially in Portugal, where they have a sailing school, a navigational school. Magellan is going to be the first person to circumnavigate the globe, although he does die along the way. They still give him credit. The guy's motivations for exploring, and the country's motivations for exploring, will be the 3 Gs: glory, God, and greed, or gold, okay? So power, the spread of Christianity, and the acquisition of wealth for one's country. If I were you, I would know Magellan. If I were you, I would also know the definition to mercantilism, which is where a country wants to export more than it imports, okay? It's kind of a very controlling relationship. So, in other words, the colonies would buy more from their mother country, and the mother country is going to exploit the riches of the colony. The Aztec Empire, conquered by Cortez, the Incan Empire, conquered by Pizarro. Both of these guys are from Spain. Please get to know them well. The Columbian Exchange is the exchange of ideas and goods from the old world over here to the new world over here, okay? Mostly we bring bad stuff from the old world, like disease, which wipes out most of the native population. From the new world, we bring some new goods, like the potato. Remember that fascinating lecture on the potato? You should. Other things, guys, the Columbian Exchange is different from the Triangle Trade. The Triangle Trade is a triangular trade from Europe, okay, over here, this is Europe, to Africa, to the Americas, okay, so we're going in a triangle. Mostly from Europe to Africa, we're sending manufactured goods. From Africa to the Americas, we're sending slaves on the Middle Passage. From the Americas, we send raw materials back to Europe. Tobacco is a good example of this if you think about how manufactured goods are sent to Africa. So let's start here in the Americas. Slaves are farming tobacco plantations. Tobacco is being sent to Europe, where it's made into cigarettes or cigars and sent to slave traders in Africa who are trading it for slaves. So that is the triangular trade. Don't forget that song. Absolute monarchs. Isn't that a pretty crown? Remember, they have divine power. They believe that their power is derived from God, and they have control over every aspect of society. Some big examples, and really big examples, would be Henry VIII, because he is so big, Louis XIV, who builds Versailles, and Elizabeth I, who defeats Spain in the Spanish Armada. She is Henry VIII's daughter. She is a dominant power and a dominant force in Europe after defeating Spain. Other absolute monarchs would be Charles I, who is beheaded after the Roundheads beat the Cavaliers in a fancy dance called the English Civil War. Don't forget those guys. Enlightenment ideas. This is again the use of reason to gain knowledge. Key thinkers. Remember that book with the Harry Potter portraits, okay? You want to know about Voltaire, Locke, Montesquieu. Think about how their ideas influenced Thomas Jefferson to write the Declaration of Independence, and in turn, that declaration in the American Revolution influences France to revolt, and the Third Estate to write the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. The Revolutionary period. If I were you, I would know 3 causes leading to the revolution and 5 major events in the revolution. So remember that social inequality between the Third Estates is going to lead to revolt. 5 major events: the Estates General, the Tennis Court Oath. Number 3, the storming of the Bastille. Number 4, Robespierre and the Reign of Terror. And number 5, Napoleon, providing economic stability and political stability to Europe. The Industrial Revolution, the important thing about this is that it starts in England, and they are going to experience political and economic stability leading to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. They have raw materials like coal in England, and again, they are stable. There are a lot of negative consequences. Children like these breaker boys are going to be working horrible conditions. Most of these guys won't live to be 16 or even 30 if they live past that. Some positive effects: there's a rise in the middle class and the standard of living. Remember that the major inventions of that period, like the steam engine, the cotton gin, the telegraph, are all very important. Decide which one is most important to you and figure out why it's important. This is also going to lead to the spread of ideas like Marxism. Karl Marx, who's really the founder of the Communist Party. We will discover him more next semester, but you might want to know just a little bit about his ideas for the exam. Imperialism. What are the effects of the expansion of Western empires? Well, it's going to increase wealth for Western countries. And when I say Western, I'm not talking about cowboys and Indians. I'm talking about Europe. Western culture and ideas are going to be spread to areas that had never seen some of their technologies before, for example. And there's going to be resistance, like the Opium Wars, the Boxer Rebellion, and these imperialized nations are not going to go easily. This is also going to lead to one of the main causes of the war, M-A-I-N. Say a cheer. Do whatever you need to do to remember those causes of war, okay? Also, the conditions of trench warfare and the weaponry, new technologies that are available at that time, like the Maxim gun. The causes of the U.S. involvement, specifically, we're looking at the sinking of the Lusitania and the Zimmermann telegram. Remember at the Treaty of Versailles, at that pretty palace that Louis XIV built, we're going to see the end of World War I, which is going to lead directly to World War II, because there's going to be a little art student with a weird mustache stewing over the fact that Germany has to pay reparations, number 1. 2, they have to accept blame for the war. 3, they're going to lose a lot of land. And 4, they're going to lose their military, which will anger Germans, and they will be ripe for a guy like Hitler to come to power. Timeline. Put all of these events in order if you want to be successful on this exam. Remember, a lot of these events happened at the same time, like the Renaissance and the Scientific Revolution and the Enlightenment and the Age of Exploration. These are not in order. Find an order for them. Don't forget, the American Revolution happens before the French Revolution. In fact, they are very inspired there. Please don't forget which one comes first and which ones come at the same time. Finally, I've got 15 minutes and 2 minutes left. Geography. Oh my, oh my. Find a map and know these places. Know these places and why they are significant. Your map on your exam will look something like this. Name the place that where the Industrial Revolution began. England is the answer, guys, but you need to be able to find that on a map as well. It's very complex. I have put an exact list here of places that you should know and the reasons behind them. So, for example, unification happens in Italy and in Germany, so I would know where those places are. The triangular trade, can you put it on a map? What major areas are involved in that? The spread of Protestantism, which spreads from Germany to England and all over Europe thanks to Gutenberg's printing press. Napoleon's campaign through Russia. Ooh, the scorched earth policy. That happens while that's going on, so you might want to know some of these things. And of course, the Age of Exploration. Remember that Spain conquered the Incan and Aztec empires. I have about 30 seconds left, guys. I've tried to give you some hints throughout regarding your short answers. So please see me specifically for questions. Until then, have a great weekend and happy studying.